Today we're going to look at how we can use the power of inking to record data in an unconventional but useful way. To do this, we're going to take a look at two implementations of a hypothetical pain scale. You'll tend to see these sort of scales on healthcare forms where a patient is asked to rate their pain. In this case, we're going to ask patients to record the pain on a scale from 0 to 10, where 0 is no pain and 10 is the worst imaginable pain. Oftentimes these scales have facial depictions to help the patient, but as some of those entail copyrights, our example will just have horizontal line and evenly spaced vertical lines. As you can see here in the designer, we've just added some drawing elements on our form. There are no fields on top of it, so our 0 and 10 labels are just that. If we were to ink on top of this, we wouldn't capture any data. We get an image of where the user inked, but we really want the computer to give us an actual value. So let's look at a possible simplistic implementation done using a mutually exclusive checkbox group. Here you can see we've created the same pain scale, but we've aligned a checkbox group on top of it. We spaced all the boxes so that there's no empty space between them, and we've removed their actual lines so that all we have is a representation of a checkbox. This doesn't obscure the scale in any way. If we double click this and look at the properties of the checkbox itself, we can see that the individual boxes have values that correspond to our pain values that are recorded below each line. We've added a little bit of script code behind the scenes so that the value of this checkbox group will be recorded in this dynamic label, but that's just for the purposes of demonstration. So if we come here to our client-side application, a user can use their pen to ink anywhere on this pain scale. For instance, if I make an inking mark through 5, we see that the 5 checkbox is checked, the pain scale value is recorded as 5, and we're good to go. A user can change their mind and record something like a 7 here, and obviously that change takes effect as well. However, we do see that there is a bit of a limitation with this sort of pain scale, because if I make a mark somewhere, say, between 4 and 5, we'll see that the checkbox, in this case 5, that happens to be a little bit closer to where the ink was, gets checked rather than the 4, but the user might really have been trying to explicitly pick 4.5. This can be fairly important for an actual patient who's trying to tell you exactly how much pain they're in. So this works, but we can do better. If we come back to the designer and go to a second page here, you can see that we've designed a more complex pain scale. In actuality, the field's a little bit simpler. We've once again added our horizontal and vertical lines and our labels beneath it, but all we've done is added a freeform control on top of that scale, extending from the top left to the bottom right. We're going to use this freeform as a container for where ink can be recorded. All of our strokes will fall somewhere in here, and we'll use that to record our actual values. Now, this is where we have to do a little bit of math, admittedly. What we can see is if I look at the after ink added event on this freeform, we've added a little bit of code to interpret where our stroke fell inside that freeform itself. Now, after ink added will be triggered every time a stroke is collected inside of the freeform itself. And because MyForms records not just the pictures of the ink, we actually have all of the coordinates that are available. So what we see is we actually go look through all of the strokes on the in the control. We get the last one, and then we start averaging their X position. We don't really care about Y positions here because all of our scale goes from 0 to 10 across the X axis. And we see that we iterate through all of the points and record an average of those. Now, we do have to translate those points back. We get them as if they were offset from the top left of the page, but we really care about where they fall relative to the freeform itself. So we subtract the position of the freeform, and then we divide by the width of the freeform itself and multiply by 10. This is ultimately going to give us a value between 0 and 10, and we can do all of this because all of that information about that field is available to us in the MyForms API. Lastly, we assign that 0 to 10 value to a different dynamic label that we have on this page, and then clear the other strokes. We really only want the user seeing the very last stroke that they recorded. So if we come back to our client application and we go over to the next page, we see we have this complex pain scale, and it works very similarly. If I make an inking stroke around 5, you see that our pain scale value gets recorded in this case as 4.98, and that's pretty close to our whole value of 5, and we can still change it. We can go make an inking mark through 7, and we get a value around 7. But in that same example where we try to ink between 4 and 5, we see that we now get a pretty nice value of 4.42. This will show us with much greater precision where our patient was actually trying to record that ink. This can be important again because maybe the pain is literally somewhere between a 4 and a 5. Of course, if our scale only went from 0 to 5, for instance, then it would be even more important to perhaps record fractional values. Now, lastly, I just want to show that this works cross-platform. I'm going to use AirPlay to mirror an iPad mini onto my Windows device. And I already have the My Forms application running, and I already have this form synchronized to this device. If I then pick my pain scale form here, we'll see that we have our simple scale on the first page, and this works in the same way that the Windows version does. I can tap on any of the areas in my form, and my checkbox gets recorded. But if I go to my next page, my complex scale, I can ink through it just like I could do with a stylus on a Windows machine. In this case, I'm using my finger so that my ink is recorded, in this case between 5 and 6, and my average comes out to 5.39. So you can see that the same form has utility on multiple platforms. Hope you enjoyed this look at a unique way to record data in a form, and I'll link the form itself in the video description down below. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email support@mi-corporation.com, and we'll be glad to talk to you about it. Thanks, and have a good day.